Hello and welcome to the August 29th, 2011.
Hello and welcome to the August 29th, 2011
Video Math Club daily lesson. Today's main idea will be operations using fractions. This is one of the more difficult topics to deal with because oftentimes fractions cause people to feel very uncomfortable about their mathematical operations. And if you remember from the last lesson on the 26th, operations again still means add, subtract, multiply, and divide. Now the important thing to know about fractions is to start off of the objective or the skills that we need to know are: one, how to add and or subtract fractions. Okay. Second goal is multiply fractions. And our third objective is to divide fractions. Okay. Some of the key vocabulary that we learned today is the top and the bottom number of a fraction. The top number is called the numerator. Okay? The numerator is always the top number. Again, that symbol means numbers. The denominator is always the bottom number. Now, based on the numerator and denominator, you're able to determine the type of fraction that there are. So there are 4 different ways to classify fractions. Okay? Let me show you some examples. There's what's called a proper fraction. Okay? And a proper fraction simply is when the numerator is a smaller number than the denominator. For example, a proper fraction is 2 over 5. What this means is that you have 2 parts out of 5 total things. Okay? An improper fraction is what's called the reciprocal of a proper fraction, meaning that the top number, the numerator, is larger than the bottom number, which means there's 5 parts, and for every whole fraction there's 2. So this improper fraction and what's called a mixed number is a skill that you should learn in order to convert improper fractions to mixed numbers. And I'm going to show you how to do that now. Again, an improper fraction means that the number on top is larger than the number on the bottom. The numerator is larger than the denominator. Given that 2, the number 2, divides into 5 okay? This is called a whole fraction. And a whole fraction is just when you have the same number on the top as on the bottom. All whole fractions equal 1. And so if you notice here, this is like saying 1 plus 1 plus a half. When I add these together, this mixed number becomes 2 whole and 1 half, which is equal to 5 halves. This is a major skill that you have to use in all the advanced mathematical programs or classes, because you have to know how to do conversions. So when I draw this arrow, this means convert. Okay? Now, our first goal to learn is how do we add fractions or subtract fractions? Okay, so skill number 1, adding or subtracting fractions. There's a rule that you have to follow, and this is something, parents, that all students should memorize. The rule is to add or subtract fractions, you must find a common denominator. Must find a common denominator. Okay? So what does that mean? What does that mean? That means that the bottom number of a fraction has to be the same. Common just means same, right? Okay, so what this means, if I'm going to add or subtract some fractions together, I have to figure out a way to find a common denominator. Now, the common denominator is often found using factors or multiples. Okay? So let's talk about these prerequisite skills. Okay? In factoring, I always think of factoring as a way to break a number down. So factoring just means that we just break numbers down into smaller numbers that divide evenly into the larger number. For example, if I wanted to add 1/2 plus 1/5, these two denominators are different. The factors of the number 2 are, given a number tree, 1 times 2. 1 and 2 are the only factors of the number 2, which is also a prime number. The factors of 5 are 1 and 5. Okay, so again, the factors of 5 are just 1 and 5. Well, there's no common factor between 2 and 5 other than the number 1, but that doesn't help us. So instead of using factors to solve this addition equation, I'm going to have to use multiples. And so the multiples of 2 are 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. The multiples of 5 are 5, 10, 15, and so forth. The common factor in this case is the number 10. 2 goes into 10 5 times. So when I use this to find equivalent fractions, I'm going to have to multiply the numerator and denominator by a whole fraction 5 over 5, which then gives me 5 out of 10. Okay? Here, the factors of 5 to get 10 is 2. So I have to use the whole number 2 over 2 and then find an equivalent fraction, which is 2 over 10. Now that they both have the same denominators, I can now add the two equivalent fraction numerators together and find that adding 1/2 plus 1/5 equals 7/10. And that's my final answer. This is a key concept and skill that you must have in order to be successful in any math class. Let's move on to the second skill. Today's second skill is how to multiply fractions. Multiplying fractions are my favorite, simply because it's the easiest operation of all fractions. Let's use those same fractions, 1/2 times 1/5. The question would be, what is the product of these two fractions? What is the product of 1/2 times 1/5? Okay? This is again where all you do is you multiply the numerator straight across and multiply the denominator straight across to find your final answer. 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 5 is 10. So the product of 1/2 times 1/5 is 1/10. Okay? Now, this is important to know because multiplying fractions is the same process as dividing fractions once you've know the rule and have set up the fractions the correct way. A key vocab word that I want everybody to know is reciprocal. Reciprocal means flip or invert or switch. And what that means is you can take a fraction and turn it over, and what you do with this fraction, when you find the reciprocal, you simply have to take the fraction, turn it over, and then you'll have the ability to divide fractions as well. So if we take the same 1/2 divided by 1/5, I have to find the reciprocal of the number, the fraction that's after the division symbol. So I'm going to use the rule invert and multiply. So what happens is I take this second fraction and I reciprocate. I change division to multiplication and I flipped the fraction 1/5 to 5/1. Now I multiply the fraction straight across, which is 5/2. And if you recall, with our example with improper fractions, the number 5/2 can then be converted from an improper fraction to a mixed number, which equals 2 1/2. This is today's lesson. If you have any questions, please feel free to give us an email or a call at wehelpstaffing@gmail.com or at 720-432-1-JOB. Thank you and have a great day. What's up, Doc?